Welcome, good people. Welcome, good people. Of course, we're in a new year, so still pushing for change, revolutionary change. We have, of course, a warrior with us today, another Prince Georgian. He's familiar on the show. He also has his own show on the Black USA, and you guys are familiar with him. So let's have a chat. Hey, what's going on, Rich? How you doing, buddy?
Hello, Councilman. Happy New Year to you and your listeners. Ready to get it started for the 2023 legislative session so the people can have a rough idea of what major topics will be discussed. We can't really go into any bills that have been introduced with great specificity because most bills have not yet been written, but we know
We'll
some
get
of
you
the
back for
major
our deep
topics.
dive.
Yeah, but we know some of the topics that'll be addressed so we can go into those.
Well, Richard, so what's on the top of your mind as you enter the legislative session? What are some priorities that you really care about? You're hearing about a lot. We have a new governor, new administration. I think there was 39 new delegates. I'm not sure how many new senators, but it's a very new house. So what do you expect?
So some of the major topic issues I expect to see legislation on this year are education, or at least taxing in regard to education and the Kerwin Commission, cannabis, not just how the market is going to be implemented, but also the criminal justice aspects, the health aspects, and many of the other ways that cannabis illegalization affects people are going to be addressed this session. And I think also on housing, I think that this session, some of the concerns that were brought up in preceding sessions regarding tenant rights, regarding rent prices, I think some of those issues will come up as well. And then finally, given that this is the first time there's been a Democratic governor in 8 years, I expect there to be some kind of procedural adjustments with how the governor and the General Assembly work, along with possibly legislative changes that affect the amount of power the governor or other agents of the state have the ability to act.
And what about cannabis? Cannabis is going to be a hot issue, right? You hearing
Mm-hmm.
anything on that? Last thing I heard is the bill's over 100 pages.
Uh-huh.
So I know it's going to be a lot of reading in which we
Yeah.
got to
So
do.
so on the opening day of session yesterday, you saw me talking with Senator Brian Feldman, who is basically the last person who you need to get everything working. You can get a bill to legalize cannabis through the House. I'm not going to say regardless of the components, but you could get a good cannabis bill through the Maryland General Assembly's House of Delegates. But in the state Senate, you have a lot of different interests. You have every different lobbying group arguing for different groups to have either certain benefits or certain non-benefits in this push for the changed market. So the major one is really how the licenses are going to be distributed. Is it going to be all of them at once? Is it going to be a one-size-fits-all approach? Is it going to be word of mouth? What is the equity process going to be? And are there any other considerations? Basically, this bill is a good lesson in what the state has learned or has not learned from the implementation of the medical cannabis market, which for many advocates has been an abject failure because of its high costs, its failure to disrupt the black market, along with the fact that it has priced out many black and brown business owners.
Okay. So that's a lot. We'll come back to fully dissect that bill. I'm sure we could spend just a segment on cannabis and the future of Maryland cannabis. All right, we definitely will as we continue through this legislative session. The next big question I have for you, Richard. I know you've always been an advocate for the people. I know that you're on the right side of issues, right? Like we don't agree on every issue, but I'd say generally you're on the right side of issues. And even if you aren't, you have a good position on why you aren't. So where is your stance on housing is a human right?
Housing is definitely a human right, not just a human right, but a human necessity. If you don't have housing, you don't have life for that long.
Okay,
Uh,
well, absolutely, Richard. I don't love to take credit or pat myself on the back, but people said that what we've been doing in Laurel has helped stem the movement that you can see across the state of
mhm.
Maryland, especially our region, like Montgomery County and Prince George is just fueling the fire and adding the community advocacy behind it. But we have some bills. I'm hearing.
Mhm.
And
Yeah,
Prince George's, soon to be Montgomery.
Councilwoman Crystal Oriata introduced a rent stabilization bill. I believe that in Montgomery, there's been stated interest in a rent stabilization bill from several current members of the county council. Janelle Wilkins, who is now the chair of the Legislative Black Caucus, I would argue that renter protections has been one of her major issues for several years, and Janelle Wilkins herself is a renter, which I think shows very, very dedicated investment in the fight. For the state level, I think that there will be at least some attempts again this year on bills for whether they be ensuring that renters have stronger protections in court, which is, I think, mostly what Annapolis has emphasized, to hopefully eventually a legislation that protects against mismanagement, that protects against having people who don't respond to service requests, and protection against sudden rent increases. But there has absolutely been momentum on those issues over the past 6 to 8 months, and I do expect some state action on those issues.
So, Rich, I was at the Renters United Maryland press conference recently. It was on Thursday at Lawyers Mall in Annapolis, and there's 4 bills they're pushing. One of the things is, not necessarily pushing rent stabilization at the state level, because for one, that's been pushed many times. But one of the things that we've seen is when it has passed at the state level, the states that it has passed at, it hasn't been at the best interest of the people because it's been at a lot higher rental cap percentage.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a lot more concessions made. Obviously, you gotta appease so many more people to pass it,
Right.
right? Like
When I,
Maryland is
I
so
believe,
geographically different.
yeah,
But
I
the bills
believe
that they're
such
pushing is just
legislation.
called. Oh, I'm sorry.
I think those issues passed as ballot measures in Oregon and
Sure.
California, if I remember correct. But I agree with you wholeheartedly. If you have a statewide rent stabilization bill, a 10% increase in one area versus a 10% increase in another area could be a wildly, wildly different circumstance. You also have issues regarding, and this may be the one that people have talked about the most in the pandemic, the inability to build new housing. I am curious, not just what the new administration, but the new General Assembly is going to do to incentivize the construction and maintenance of actually affordable housing that's like roughly $1,100 or less a month in the state.
Yes, I agree with you, and that's definitely going to be something that we continue to talk to the Moore administration, the Moore Miller administration about. The priorities are just cause preemption. So passing at the state level preemption bill that would give counties the power to pass just cause laws. As we pass rent stabilization, at the city level, hopefully my city, soon to be Mount Rainier, definitely other cities, but definitely the county level. We need just cause to make sure there aren't just these crazy evictions. But also the other bill is funding for rental assistance. I think they had a call for 173 million to the tune, and the other thing was class action lawsuits for tenants. Basically to bring against um, aggrieved landlords who are slumlords, and then the last one was some type of like housing standards. Um, so those are kind of the four priorities. Improving the qualities, getting rental assistance, just cause to make sure people aren't, being thrown out.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I said all four.
Well,
But
in regards to kind of the grand strategy of the Moore
yeah,
Miller administration, they announced several members for their cabinet yesterday. I think they announced like 6 members. I do not think they've yet picked the person who will be their Department of Housing and Community Development director, but I am
yes,
hopeful and optimistic they choose somebody that is dedicated to using all the tools of the state, whether it be historic preservation or using tax exemptions or whatever it may be that can ensure affordability where it is needed and that can add new units in the state. We need to build new housing. We absolutely need it. We need
yes,
new
Rich.
housing, especially in some of the like city centers in Prince George's, where now, especially like in Laurel, in Bowie,
Yes,
there's more of a
absolutely.
city at the outskirts of your city than there is in the city at times.
Hey, preach, Rich. Well, Rich, I gotta let you go. But I hope to see you. This weekend we got this MLK
Mhm.
Fight for Fair Housing
The symposium.
symposium and resource fair. We have a host of speakers, panelists, bunch of exhibitionists, and we are putting together a conversation. In Prince George's County for too long, we've looked good, we smelled good, we've spoken good, but we haven't always done so good. So,
Mhm.
this is what, we're going to do. And, I hope to see you there, Rich. I know you've always been in the fight. But, any last words, last comment?
Keep your eyes on this legislative session in Annapolis. This will be a rather unique one. I think that the House of Delegates is going to have an outsized role compared to past years. And I think that Governor Moore is going to prove to be one of the most interesting governors we've had in our state's history. That's all. Happy 2023 to everybody listening. And this was your Councilman, Martin Mitchell, with me, Richard Elliott, on Black News Network. Thank you. Black USA.
Nonetheless,
Black USA.
yes, one of many. See you soon, Rich. Stay black and classy.
Yes, sir.
All right. Later. All right. That was Richard Elliott. See you next time. And don't forget, people over politics. Just that simple. Later, guys.